Welcome to The Current by TreasureCoast.com, where we discuss interesting people, places, and happenings on Florida's Treasure Coast.
Well, Mayor Martin, thanks again for being on. I think actually this is probably the third time that you've been here because we had you on like February of last year. But for anybody who might not be familiar with you, why don't we start with your introduction?
Sure. Mayor Shannon Martin. I've proudly served the city of Port St. Lucie for the last 5 years as mayor. Prior to that, I've been serving on the city council, serving our residents since 2010, first as a District 3 rep and then as vice mayor in 2016. And like I said, for the last 5 years, I ran in 2021 in a special election and in 2022 in the 2022 election for the full term as mayor, and running again this year. I love serving our community. It is my passion. I love meeting and engaging with our residents and being very transparent and open and making sure that we are doing all the things in our strategic plan that is based on what our residents tell us that they want and need. And we do that by our community survey. We do that by our stakeholder meetings that we have. We do it with our citizen summit that I championed years ago to make sure that our residents can come in and have a voice and see what we're doing. So everything we do is based on what our residents want and need. And I really pride myself on that results-driven leadership and listening and making sure that we're acting on those important things in our community.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think one thing that might be interesting is, going into a new campaign or a new election. I mean, obviously you've been serving the city for a while. Have things changed as far as maybe what your priorities are, or do different things kind of take the front? I guess it largely might depend on what residents are coming in and saying and what you're hearing from the public. But from your own perspective, how has that evolved over time?
Oh, it's definitely evolved over time. When you have 55,000 new residents move to the city in a 5-year period, which is something that no one could ever expect or no one ever could have predicted that would happen. It definitely changed the dynamics of things, and it has been challenging, right? You have to balance all the priorities out. You have residents who have been in the city a long time and have certain expectations. You have newer residents moving in that have certain expectations, and trying to balance all that out, especially when dealing with the growth, is something that has been a game changer and a priority that we've been working on for the last 5 years, trying to make sure we're addressing infrastructure needs, making sure we're addressing our utility needs, stormwater, public safety, every facet of our organization. We've had to pivot and be flexible and change the way we look at things, being very data driven and making sure that we're making the right decisions for our community. And also, meanwhile, making sure we're being very fiscally responsible, giving back with our tax rate reductions in the last 11 years. It was 10 years. This year, the council voted again to reduce the millage rate by 1/10 of a mil. And over that time period, we have reduced our tax rate in Port St. Lucie by 25%. There's a lot of talk about, we're the highest in the state. And that may be true from the St. Lucie County perspective for the whole tax bill. But when it comes to the city of Port St. Lucie, we have reduced our rate 11 years in a row, giving back to our residents as much as we possibly can while still being able to provide the best value of services for a growing organization.
I'm glad you clarified the tax bill thing. I think that a lot of people anywhere, sometimes you kind of have to look at your tax bill to kind of break down what's going where and what's being allocated to what, and if you've got like a CDD attached to it or how things also work. What are your thoughts? I mean, when it comes to growth, and you brought up growth, do you see that as continuing to being one of the biggest challenges that faces the city in the next maybe 4 years? And I guess because along with growth that comes, infrastructure, safety, all that stuff, I guess is kind of tagged along within that.
Sure, it affects everything. And what a lot of people don't understand is that with the growth that we've had, we have seen a slowdown in the last year. We went down to 6,200 residents that we gained from 24 to 25. That may seem like a lot still, but the reality is that the year before that, we had 14,000 residents move to the city. And a lot of people don't realize that there's a lot of talk about stop the growth, but we can't do that because of the way we were formed as a community. We were formed as a platted community, so anyone who owns a single family lot can build a single family home. And also all the development rights that were granted all those over 20 years ago. And so we have to live with those legal documents, and we have to just work to balance it out and grow smartly as much as we possibly can, because we can't take those rights away. I can't take them away. The council can't. No future council can take those rights away. So we have to work within those confines. And hopefully we don't see the escalation in the future as quickly as we have. Like I said, we have had a slowdown. So I'd like to see that. I'm hoping to see that be more balanced out. And that's a result of the national economy, right? What we've seen with inflation and all the things that are happening with the high interest rates. And those things are not something that the city can control. But it's always about planning for the future in every facet of our organization, especially infrastructure, which we have been working on infrastructure quite heavily and will continue to do so. Public safety, our economic jobs corridor, continuing to work on that to provide, facilitate good paying jobs in the city. So it's a mix of everything. Our stormwater program, which is not just about swales, but all the canals, our utility infrastructure. So there's a lot to plan for that we have been planning for, and we have to continue to get those projects ready for the future, because they take a long time to do. You can't slap down some concrete or some asphalt and say that's a sidewalk or that's a road widening or a road improvement. There's a lot more engineering that goes into it. Designs take a couple years before you even get to construction. Also, depending on where the resources come from, is it general fund? Is it road and bridge money? Is it state dollars? So there's a lot that goes into it that a lot of people don't understand, that we constantly have to talk about.
And I'm sure that a city as large as Port St. Lucie, there's a lot going on, but that kind of spurs to mind a question I had regarding, what projects might be coming up. I know at the recent meeting, there were certain things that were going to be kicking off within the next few years, and maybe it's like 2029. I mean, there's stuff like St. Lucie West Boulevard, I think, is planned to be widened. I mean, I think there's a long time frame for a lot of things, but what in your eyes are some of the projects that you think are going to be most effective? It could be a shorter term project or something maybe down the line that you think is going to have the best impact on maybe traffic or dealing with certain growing pains or things like that.
Yeah. So we're going to see the Gatlin-Savona intersection get improvements next year. That is a much needed area that needs to be addressed in terms of turn lanes, repaving. Tradition and Village Parkway also needs improvements that we've gone to design for, and that'll be coming forward next year. We're obviously in phase 3 of Floresta. The final stretch of PSL Boulevard South from Parr down to Becker Road. You mentioned St. Lucie West Boulevard. Absolutely. We already did the study on that and were presented at the budget workshop. Those improvements that are going to be made, we absolutely need to make sure we're doing St. Lucie West Boulevard and addressing that. Putting in roundabouts at Darwin and Parr and Savona and Parr. And I know it was mentioned about how roundabouts, get rid of roundabouts. Well, roundabouts are much safer. They move people. Mobility is something to make sure that we lessen our traffic congestion is something that's very important in our city. And so also what's even more important with regard to traffic crashes is that roundabouts reduce the number of right angle crashes or T-bone crashes as we commonly know them. So they're much safer than a regular intersection. And so we're making sure that we're addressing those things because we want to make sure we continue to be as safe as possible, especially as it relates to traffic. But we also want to make sure people can have less congestion and be able to move around the city.
And what are your thoughts as far as what areas maybe are getting more attention or in need of more attention? I don't know if that's like such a loaded question because there are so many different areas, but I know there's been a lot of talk of, whether it's, people are talking about out in tradition. You had mentioned finishing off that final stretch of Port St. Lucie Boulevard. I know Walton and One, or at least a soccer stadium, came up, and I don't want to like beat a dead horse there
Yeah.
either. But I mean, whatever areas you feel are in need of or are getting the most attention in the coming years.
So we have a lot of projects that are coming forward that are all throughout the city. When I just mentioned a few, we have projects going on the east side. We have projects going on the west side of the city. It's based on priority and what the needs are, especially when we're looking at intersection improvements. It's where are the crashes happening? What does the road look like in terms of how is it deteriorating? And we have a consultant group that looks at all of our roads every 3 years to make determinations on what roads need to get paved faster than others because of their deterioration. Can we put sealant on some of those roads to extend the life before we have to repave them? So all of these things are happening. And it was mentioned, well, why have so many projects? Why have 90 infrastructure projects in process? Because there's a lot to do, and these plans go out to the year. Some of these plans go out to the year 2050. And we always have to be forward thinking and proactive about how we are planning things out in the future. We're going to see improvements on California Boulevard between Crosstown and St. Lucie West. So that project is in design right now. There's, like I mentioned, there are so many things that have to be done. We're 121 square miles. So we have to make sure that we're addressing all areas of the city, and not just one area. So I know there's a lot of talk about that. But that is exactly what we're doing. We're looking at every section of the city, and we're planning for what those improvements are, because they're going to need to be done in the future for sure.
Yeah, I guess staying one step ahead is probably a good idea. I mean, I know that you had mentioned a lot of Port St. Lucie. It's kind of platted, and people are gonna they're gonna be able to build a home if they've got the land. There's not really much we could that the council or the mayor can do about it. And then I'm interested in your thoughts, because you had also brought up jobs and the economy, what opportunities there might be for things like employment or lifestyle stuff, like dining and entertainment. I know that gets talked about more in certain places and less in other places.
Right.
So I'm interested in your thoughts on how that might look.
Now you went out for a second. Your sound went out for a second, but so all of those things are things that we're working on out in the west side. There's a lot of commercial redevelopment happening, and it's up to those commercial real estate developers to bring in those restaurants, those retail establishments. You mentioned the soccer stadium, so let's take Walton and One. It's a perfect example of how we've been looking for redevelopment of the east side for such a long time, and being able to enhance that corridor from an economic development perspective. And so what we're doing is with the soccer stadium is a catalyst. It's not all, Walton and One is not all about the soccer stadium. The soccer stadium is the catalyst to the future redevelopment. You need to bring something to the area that people want to be able to go and enjoy, right? So the soccer stadium will bring economic development. It will bring the hotels. It will bring the retail establishment. It'll bring the workforce housing, which we are looking forward to doing in the future. So again, it's the catalyst piece that we're hoping is the incentive and the start of the redevelopment of that entire area. We have a amazing economic development project called Lactologics. It is a human milk distribution facility. And there's one in California, a company established here at the Old Liberty Medical Building. And so they are going to be providing breast milk to women all over the country and to hospitals for women who can't feed their babies naturally, but would like to be able to feed their babies naturally. So that's huge. That's happening on the east side. So there's been a lot of talk about how the west side has developed, and we need to pay attention to the east side. And that's exactly what we're doing with the redevelopment in the CRA over at Walton and One. We want it to be that walkable destination point where you can shop, you can enjoy entertainment, you can go to a soccer game if you want to, you can go to a hotel, you can enjoy whatever's happening at Mid-Florida Event Center. And so that is really important. And then, of course, we have our economic development corridor and our Southern Grove Jobs Corridor. Thousands of jobs have been created as a result of all the companies that have been established there and will continue to be established there. And we're really proud of that because when we first did our strategic plan in 2014, that's why we started it. Because our economic jobs corridor, because our residents said there's nowhere to work in Port St. Lucie. I have to drive, to Martin County or Indian River County or Palm Beach County. And so we want to be able to provide that area where there could be those jobs corridor, and we can keep our local economy, the money spent in our local economy right here.
I appreciate you clarifying a lot of that, because I think sometimes, and I think it's really interesting to think about kind of Walton One and I guess the soccer stadium more as like an anchor. I mean, a lot of times, no matter where you are, it could be on the Treasure Coast, it could be anywhere nationwide. Like certain things kind of take they kind of become like the headpiece, the headline of what's going on. That's really cool. I'll have to keep up with that Loctologics thing. That's a really cool concept to be coming here to the area. What are your thoughts? I know we talked a little bit the first time you're on about safety. I know safety's been something that you and the city have been proud of for a while. And I'm interested, if you've got any thoughts there, any updates there, any ideas of fortifying the city's safety ratings in the coming years.
Absolutely. So we've been the safest city in the state of Florida for the last 13 years in a row. It's something that we're really proud of, making sure we're giving our police department the resources and the tools that they need in order to continue serving the community, our ever-changing community, and keeping us as safe as possible. I championed the police training facility. It was something during our accreditation that was mentioned by the CALIA, the accreditation group, that for a city of our size, we didn't have our own police training facility. And what was happening was our officers had to go out up to the county, out to Okeechobee for training. It was becoming really difficult because all the agencies share and get time at those facilities. Also, to be able to save funds for them having to pay them and go out on overtime. They can be, if we had our training facility right here on our municipal campus, they can come in from the chief can have them come in and do a short training if he wants to, and then get them right back out on the street. Also, we have the opportunity now, instead of spending money on sending our officers for training other places, the chief can now have those trainers and those professionals who provide the training come to our training facility and train our officers for free, and then charge other agencies to come also, but they also could provide some revenue and come train at our facility. So it was about efficiency. It was about obviously saving money. And it's also about making sure that our officers have the best opportunity and for the most training possible. The FDLE requires 40 hours of training every 4 years. Our police department requires 40 hours of training every year. And the chief wants to increase that as well. So the better trained force you have, the better for the community, especially dealing with all the issues that our police department has to address today. Also, the drone as a first responder program, utilizing technology where we can to make sure that we have the eyes of what's happening on the ground, sending up the drones from 6 different locations in the city and the drones can get to where the calls for service are before the officers can even get there. And then what can happen is the drones, which is already happening and been very successful, the drones can provide that real-time footage of what's happening so that when the officers get there, they're already ahead of the game. And the first day that we deployed the drone program, we were able to find, or the police department was able to find, an autistic person who was wandering towards a canal. And so a life was saved as a result of that. And so that's something that we're really proud of. And again, utilizing that technology, because we're never going to be able to hire our way out of, and hire as many officers as we need, because we have a budget and personnel is very expensive. So making sure we're doing that. Our real-time public safety operations center also that the chief is launching, to make sure that we have eyes on the ground of what's happening in real time in our intersections, and being able to look at every single intersection in the city and see what's happening, and for deployment of resources where that's needed, working in conjunction with Public Works. So lots of great things are going to continue to happen, and we're going to continue to put safety first always.
Is that the flock cameras that people have been talking about? Is that what you had mentioned?
So the license plate readers are deployed throughout the city, and those are for have already been successful. We've had a couple murders that were solved as a result of getting those suspects. They're license plate readers. They're out on the street, on the public street, and they help also in assisting catching the bad guys, and being able to solve those cases. Absolutely. So.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure if that was involved in kind of the. I'm sure it all kind of works together if you've got a camera like that, or if you've got cameras at intersections, or if you got drones going out. The technological side, I think, like many people, it kind of goes over my head. So, but I did see that the chief had talked about it a little bit at the last meeting. So, I appreciate you touching on that. I wanted to shift a little bit into something I'd written down towards the beginning of our conversation, about parks and green spaces, because last time we talked, the city had bought that parcel off of Rosser, and we also talked about some of the regional parks going on. And I'm interested to know if you've got any interesting updates or thoughts on where parks and green spaces could be heading in the future, or anything in that regard.
Yeah, so we have acquired since January of 2025. The city has acquired over 280 acres of land for future green space or future park space. What you mentioned, Rosser Lakes Preserve, that was an area that was going to be residential. And I went out there with the city manager, said, absolutely not. This land is beautiful. It has 2 lakes on it. It has nature trails. We should keep this in perpetuity so our residents can enjoy this green space. We're always looking to see what we can acquire in the future. We created a naturally PSL green spaces and places program, so we can put these properties into that land bank and keep them in forever for our residents, because our residents have told us they want less residential. So in the areas where we have the opportunity to be able to keep those properties and acquire those properties as green space, we're going to absolutely continue to do that. And again, that's driven by what the feedback that we got from the community. So we are listening, and we have acquired several properties, and we're going to continue to do that as much as we can as our funding does allow. We also have go out for grants as well for conservation, to get conservation monies for acquiring green space, and we'll continue to do that as well. We're always looking to get as many grants as we possibly can, not just for that, but for everything, to help offset, the cost to our residents.
I appreciate that. I maybe as kind of like a side question of that are there certain things that you think are common misconceptions that you hear about, whether it's development or ways that you might deal with grants for not just parks or green spaces, but for maybe for infrastructure? I know you had mentioned road fund as well. I mean, what are some of the common misconceptions that you might see that people probably should keep in mind?
A lot of the misconception is really how the budget is run, how we have to leverage all of our resources in order to make sure that we have the funding. We have our general fund money. We have a road and bridge fund. Some of the funds come for our road and bridge fund. The money comes from the gas tax. We have special assessment districts. So there's a lot of different sources, and we have to make sure we're leveraging all of those sources. Our budget is very transparent. I know that there's some misconception or some statements being made that our budget isn't transparent. It's on the first page of our city website. There's an actual how-to video on how to understand the budget. People don't understand how our budgeting works and how that if you have a capital budget and then you have the regular general fund budget or the budget, the overall budget in general, that once the money in the project is going to go to construction in that capital improvement fund, then the money has to be transferred into the general fund budget or the overall budget, and that increases the budget. So we just talked about our governmental finance accounting rules and how we have to follow them. And so when you see that our budget is increasing year to year, there's absolutely reasons for that. It's either we're transferring money from one place to another for a project like North-South A or Sundance Trail, which is happening this year. We have $212 million of projects that are going to get done. They're all project driven. So then that increases the budget too, because we're talking about the projects that are going to get done over the next year. So there's a lot of misunderstanding about how the budgeting works. And we talk about it a lot. I wish more people would take City University. We have a free 6-week program. We have had so many people go through that, but I would love for more and more of our residents to get engaged and take our free 6-week City University program so that they can see how our city actually operates. It's I don't know if you've taken it, Josh, but everyone that I've talked to that have graduated that has really come out with a great knowledge about how the city operates. There's another thing is there's no process that is easy. Majority of them are complicated because it's not just about working together with just the city administration or our residents. We have to follow state laws. We have to follow South Florida Water Management District. We have DEP, Department of Environmental Protection. So there are a lot of different agencies that we also have to work with in order to get things done. And that affects timelines as well. Working with our state when the state gives us money for road projects, and they take over those projects and they're the ones that are in control as opposed to the city. So there's definitely a lot that goes into everything that we do.
Yeah, I appreciate you touching on that, and I'm going to have to check out City University. I'm ashamed to say that this is the first time I've heard of it, which is I probably should have at this point, but that's cool. That's awesome to hear about. But before we finish up, I want to ask you.
Yeah. You can also do it online.
Is it on the City PSO website? Because I'll include it when we publish this.
It should be, yeah. You could take it on demand.
Cool.
You can.
Okay,
It's
I'll
on the city website for sure. I think it's /City University.
Cool. Yeah, I'll include that because I'm sure that people would be interested at the very least to get more familiar with what's going on around them. I want to. Yeah. I was going to ask you. What was I going to ask you beforehand? Oh, you know what? What would you think? If you were to look forward, let's say 10 years from now, assuming you were reelected, and you were to look back. I mean, what are some things that you would hope to point to as successes, as things like you feel like you could hang your hat on?
Definitely continuing to be the safest city in the state of Florida, making sure that we're continuing to get all of our infrastructure projects done that we need for our community. And that's not just on roads, that's also on our stormwater plan. Our stormwater plan is not just about the swale system. We have all the canals that we have to maintain. So it's much bigger than that, our entire system. Our utility remains to be state-of-the-art utility system, making sure that we do have that capacity for 50 to 100 years out, and that's what we do plan for. Making sure we have the parks that we need for our residents to continue to enjoy their quality of life. And we just opened Stars and Stripes. We had Riverland Paseo that opened prior to that, Pioneer Park, which is very successful. We have Torino underway. Tradition Regional should be done soon. So making sure that we're doing all the things that have enhanced our residents' quality of life, continuing to keep our residents at the forefront of our decision making, continuing to reduce our millage rate as much as we can, continue to reduce our debt. We've reduced our debt by over $400 million. So there are so many things that go into, when you're looking out into the future. And if you take a look back and say, yes, I'm proud that we did X, Y, and Z, that we could point to. And we've had great successes so far. And I know that we're going to have even more successes in the future. I also want to quickly talk about transparency. And the city was given an award by Granicus for the website of the year. We changed our entire website to be more resident friendly and much more transparent. So that's something that we're really proud of. Another thing that got brought up is that our projects are over budget, and they are absolutely not over budget. Another complicated facet is that when we get estimates of projects, when it comes to actually getting the projects done, because of the inflation and because of the economy, those projects do increase in cost. We've seen, anywhere from a 40 to 60% increase of cost because of the economy. And so it's important to note that they're not over budget. It's just they end up costing more because of everything that we're dealing with the marketplace. It's also been stated that the city has a $600 million reserve fund. That is not correct. The city has a $600 million investment fund. We have a 20% policy to have 20% reserves in all of our funds. And the reason why we have a $600 million investment portfolio is because that is the vehicle that is used to safely invest our public funds while we are determining what we need them for. So that is important for everyone to know, that there is a difference between what's in our reserve fund and then in the investment portfolio for the city, which also is even more important because we have a credit rating in the city. We have bond ratings in the city, just like we have credit ratings in our personal lives. And we want to make sure that we are being very fiscally and financially responsible and making sure that we have those funds in place so that if we do have to go out to bond for future projects, that we get a very low credit interest rate, and that our credit standing remains high with Moody's, Standard & Poor's, and Fitch as well. So I just wanted to make sure I pointed out some of that stuff too. So we're going to continue to be results driven. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm very proud of a lot of our accomplishments that we've made. I want to continue serving our residents. I'm looking forward to doing so, and I hope everyone will continue to support me going forward with the August primary. So thank you so much, Josh. I always love coming on and speaking with you about all things city.
Let's do it. It's always good talking with you, Mayor Martin. I appreciate it.
That's a wrap for this episode of The Current by TreasureCoast.com. If you enjoyed the conversation, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Follow us on social media or visit TreasureCoast.com for local events, tips, and news. Have a guest or topic you'd love to hear on the show? Let us know at TreasureCoast.com. Until next time, keep riding the current and enjoying everything